Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to AIP Tutorials. So let's say, hypothetically, you're doing some work for a client, and they want a nice little space scene with Jupiter and a UFO flying behind Jupiter and this word space appearing. Now let's say you put it all together, and you send it out to the client for them to approve it, and they want a lot of changes done. Depending on your type of client, that could be a really easy feat, or it could be a really difficult one. So what I'm going to be showing today is some really neat tips and tricks as to how you can make that editing process a lot smoother and quicker. So what we can do to streamline this whole process is add just some controls in our main comp that we can control everything from this one location. Now this can be done by linking one effect to the same effect in this comp, but we can also use these expression controls to make life a lot easier. Now, before we get started, there are a couple important things that need to be pointed out right away. The first important thing is to make sure that all your layers are named properly. And I mean in a way that you'll know exactly which one is which. Now, that's important for two reasons. The first being that it just makes your life a whole lot easier. The second one is more important to what we're trying to do today, which is we're going to be linking effects inside of one comp into another composition. And it is where the importance of proper naming happens. Now, to get further into what I mean by that, we'll go into the second important thing, which is to understand expressions in general. So let's run through that real quick. So here I have an adjustment layer with a transform effect, and inside of our ship comp, I have an expression here linking the opacity of our layer to the opacity of our transform effect. Now this may look pretty confusing and overwhelming, and I don't know what is all of this, right? All right, so let's break it down. Now basically, this expression is like a directory. It's telling After Effects where to look for all these things. So first off, it starts off, look inside the composition called main comp, which is this one. And inside that main comp will be a layer called adjustment layer 5, which is this one. And after that, it's separated by another period, and it's telling it inside that adjustment layer, there'll be an effect called transform. And that is our effect right up in here. Now, inside of that transform, there's going to be a little thing that says opacity, and it's going to say that's the one you want. All this is automatically generated by After Effects when you link stuff together, but it's still very important to understand exactly what this means, because we're going to be getting into writing some of our own expressions, and we need to have that basic understanding. So let's jump into the actual meat and potatoes of this tutorial. Maybe your client wants the text to say something different. Now what we can do is right click and add a new text layer, and let's type in space. All right, so what we can do is inside of our text glow, which actually if you click on the layer name and change it to source name, you'll see that these three layers are actually the same composition, our text PC. So we want to go into, you can double click on any one of these and it'll bring you to the same comp. So now we have our space text here, and we have our space text in this composition. All right, so inside of our main comp, if we open up our text layer here, you'll see an option for text. And if we open that up, you'll see a source text with a stopwatch next to it. Now, anytime you see a stopwatch, you can add an expression to it by alt-clicking on that stopwatch. But what we want to do is link the text inside of our text PC to this layer. So what we can do to make this a heck of a lot easier is take our text PC once it's opened right here, and if we click and drag it down to this purple box, that will put our text PC below whatever composition we're working in, so we can see both at the same time. So let's open up our text source, and let's alt click on the stopwatch, and then take this pick whip right here and just connect it to the source text inside of our main comp. So to get out of this dialog box, all you need to do is click outside of it, just like that. All right, so I have caps lock turned on. Let's turn that off. All right, so let's bring our text PC back up to here. Come on, grab it. There you go. All right, so one thing we're going to need to do is actually turn off the visibility for our text controls, which let's name that text, CTRL, little s. So we're going to turn the visibility off for this. Now, one thing to point out here, I changed the name of this layer, and if we, let's get rid of that. If we go back into here, this automatically updated to text controls, which is nice. But, however, if I were to go back into our main comp and select our text controls and pre-compose these, Shift Command C, move all attributes, we'll name it whatever, and hit OK, you'll see this error. So, if we go back into our text PC and click on this little guy right here, a dialog box will pop up and say, we don't know where this is. Saying look in main comp, and there should be a layer called text controls. But there isn't a layer called text controls. So in order to fix this real quickly, we can go into our text controls and then take our text PC, move that back down, and we can reconnect that. First we need to open this up, go to text, source text, and then we can reconnect that. Now that's not what we want to do, but I just wanted to demonstrate that sometimes you will have to go in and reconnect things if you change things around. All right, so let's go back. We got to go back.
We have to go back!
We went back too far. There we go. Text controls. All right, let's bring our text PC once again, back up there. Let's set this. Let's move our main comp in front of our text. So now we have linked our text controls. So what I can do is with this layer selected, I can go in here and let's say the client wants space spelled differently. Space. There. Now, if we turn this off, because we need to do that anyway, you'll see that our text automatically updates. Now, here's the catch to this. Now, when you connect the source text, the only thing you are controlling is what the text layer actually says. You can't control, let's say, the size of the font. Obviously, we're changing the size here, but it's not updating in our text PC. All right, so before we move on, let's just let's get rid of that Y, because that's going to bother me because I know that it's spelled wrong. All right, so let's turn off our text controls so that it's no longer visible. So now we have connected one text source to another text source. So now let's show how we can connect two effects to each other within different comps. All right, so on top of our text controls, we're going to change the color of our font. So we have this fill. So we want to connect this fill to another fill on top of our text controls. And fill would be under generate. So let's add that on top of our text controls. And what we can do here is lock this up right here, so that even if we click on another layer, we'll still be seeing the effects for our text controls. Now this is important. All right, so let's go to our text color layer and hit E on the keyboard to bring up the effects that are on this layer. So you see that we have our fill. So let's twirl that open, and under color, we have another stopwatch. So we can connect this color using the same technique, Alt-click, take the pick whip, and link it to the color. Now, as I pointed out, you can click outside of this dialog box to close it up, or if you have a number pad on your keyboard, you can also hit Enter. Boop. Now you'll see that the color automatically changed to red, which was what this was set at. Let's say your client wants your text to be yellow with the blue stroke. Well, there you go. All right, so real quickly, let's rename this first fill to text color. Oops, there we go. Text color. So now let's say the client wants this glow to be maybe blue. So we can hit E to bring up the effects. And then here we have a tint with the map white to like an orange color. All right, so what we can do here is if we go into Effect, Expression Controls, we can add one of these little bad boys that are going to be your friends for the rest of your life. All right, so we're going to start off with a color control. So not only can we link, whoopsies, see what you did there. We want to make sure that our text control layer is selected. In our text glow, map white to, we can alt-click on that stopwatch and pick whip it to the color of our color control. And it automatically turns red. Good. That's exactly what we want. All right, so now let's select our blue that we're going to use. Maybe this guy. There we go. It doesn't look too cheesy. Now let's say the next thing your client wants is Jupiter to be rotating, which currently there is no rotation. All right, so we can quickly and easily set this up. Let's create a new adjustment layer. All right, so what we can do is actually unlock this so we can, because we're not going to really need it right now. And we can go to our adjustment layer, which we're going to rename to Planet, CTRLS. planet controls. Now for the planet rotation, we're going to use one of our newfound friends, the expression controls, and that is the angle control. This is how you can control angles or rotation. So let's add that to our planet controls, and let's call this planet rot, R-O-T for rotation. So what we can do is, again, lock this up, and let's go into our Jupiter map comp. And here, if we hit E, we will see CC sphere. Now, if we open this up and go into a rotation, we want to rotate on the Y axis. Now you notice the rotation is in degrees. Angles are in degrees, hence the connection. All right, so let's alt-click on the stopwatch for rotation Y in our CC sphere and link that up to the angle. And also it's important to notice that you can't link it to the actual effect name. You have to actually link it to the thing that you're trying to link, which makes sense, right? Connect that to the angle. All right, so what we can do is jump into our main comp again, and we can even add an expression to this angle. We're just getting, this is expression inception. All right, so let's alt-click on the stopwatch for angle, and let's type in one of my favorite and most used expressions, the time times. So we're going to type in time, asterisk for the multiplication in this instance, and we want to rotate, let's say 7 degrees every second. And if we play this, actually, let's do something real quick. Let's turn off all our texts and our ship, make this easier. And you can see that we have rotation on our planet. Now, I think that's a little too fast. So what we can do is change this to maybe like 3. Now, you might be able to start to see how setting up these controls can be useful, because every time we would want to change this number, we would have to go into our Jupiter comp and then change the number and then go into our main comp, check it out. Oh, no, still too fast, you know? But all we have to do here, right up front here, we can just change that number. Now, one thing, I want it to start its rotation at -17 so that this spot is more towards here. So what we can do is click into our expression and at the end add a minus sign and 17. So that way it will start off with a degree of -17 and then rotate in a positive direction 2 degrees every second. Now, if you wanted this to rotate in the opposite direction, what we need to do is click into our expression once again and go right before the 2 and add a minus symbol there. So that way it will rotate in the opposite direction. But we don't want that. We do want time times 2 minus 17. All right, and I think that's a good rotation just for our stupid little animation. Now, your client has yet another suggestion. Try a different planet, why don't we? Why don't we try Saturn instead? Well, we can set up a cool little thing here that we can quickly turn off the visibility for both of these layers at the same time. Now, I'm making this claim because I just had this idea as I'm recording this. So we'll see if it works out. All right, so on our planet controls, let's add the expression control, checkbox control. Planet visibility. Viz. How about that? All right, here we're going to get pretty creative with it. Let's turn both our Saturn and Jupiter on, just to prove that Saturn's there. There's no rings because I couldn't be bothered. So we have Jupiter and we have Saturn without the rings. Naked Saturn, we'll call it. All right, so what we can do is click on Jupiter, hit T on the keyboard to bring up our opacity. And let's alt-click on that stopwatch and pick whip it to the checkbox control. Now, if we just click out of this, it's not going to know what to do. And if we turn this on, nothing happens. What we want to make it do is that when this checkbox is on, Jupiter will be visible, but also Saturn will be invisible. And conversely, if we have this unchecked, Jupiter will be invisible while Saturn is visible. But first we need to set up this expression here because it's not finished. So what we need to do is type in if, open parentheses. Now it will automatically create another parentheses right next to it, but we don't want that. We want to get rid of that. And we want to go to the end here after this checkbox, and we want to type in == 1. So what this is saying, the checkbox works on a 0 or 1 kind of position. 0 is being unchecked while 1 is being checked off. So we want to close that parentheses right there and then add 100 else 0. And we can put a semicolon at the end if we want to. So now we have this expression that says if this checkbox is on, the opacity will be set to 100. And if this is checked off, the opacity is going to be at 0. So let's turn this on real quick. It worked. So what I said is that I want whenever Jupiter is visible for Saturn to be invisible. And whenever Saturn is visible, Jupiter is invisible. So let's take this expression. Let's hit Command C to copy it. And go down to our Saturn comp, hit T, Alt click on the stopwatch to create an expression. And we're going to paste that expression on. But we're going to make two little changes here. Let's change this 100 to 0. And the 0 to 100, not 1000. Jeez. So that is saying when this checkbox is checked on, the opacity will be set to 0 for this layer. And when it's off, it will be set to 100. Moment of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, let's turn off our checkbox. Okay, I clicked on it, it didn't do anything. Let's turn off our checkbox. For real this time. Look at that. Isn't that pretty neat? I literally just thought of that as I was recording this tutorial, and I'm glad it worked out. Otherwise, I look like an idiot. So that's a quick and easy way to change the visibility of things. All right, so before we move on to the next part, I'm going to change the color of this layer to match the planets. So let's change that to orange. So if we go to text glow, we'll see that we have a fractal noise set here, and our fractal type is dynamic progressive. Now let's say we want to switch between these without having to go into our text glow layer. We can go into our text controls. So let's add one of our best buddies in the effects controls, the drop down menu control. All right, again, we're going to lock this up. We're going to go to our text glow, hit E to open up our fractal noise. Now this drop down menu, it's a little bit different to set up. All right, so here we have our fractal noise. Our fractal type, we can alt click on that stopwatch and pick whip it to our drop down menu. All right, so now if we go into our text controls and we have this menu, we can switch this to item 1, or we can switch it to item 2. Nothing happens. Item 3, something does change. So what this is, item 1, 2, and 3, is looking at our fractal type, item 1, item 2, item 3. So let's set up this drop-down control so that we can actually see the name of the item that we're trying to choose. So down here in our fractal type, we have basic, then we have turbulent smooth, turbulent basic, turbulent sharp. Now in a way, this drop-down menu is kind of a pain because we need to go into edit and we can click on item 1 and let's just name that basic. And this will change it automatically to basic. Now we also want to put in turbulent smooth and turbulent basic as well, and turbulent sharp. Now to add a fourth item, we can just click on this plus sign right here, and we can add our new item. And we'll just copy this turbulent basic, do that, and then just put in sharp. All right, so now we have our 4 ones, but if we go to here and we switch this from basic to turbulent smooth, now if we look at our fractal type, it's got this weird thing. And it doesn't look like anything has changed, and it's not saying turbulent smooth. Now if we change this to turbulent basic, it'll go to turbulent smooth. Now here is another problem with this drop-down menu, but also a workaround. So this is looking at items in a drop-down menu. If we take a look at our fractal type, you can see that we have basic, a separation here, then turbulent smooth, basic, and turbulent sharp. So it's counting this break. So if you ever see this line, you know that this is reading that as a separate item. So what we can do is copy this and then change the turbulent smooth to something like blank, and then paste our turbulent smooth, and then paste our turbulent basic. And that's as far as we'll go for the explanation. Hit OK. Now we can set this to basic, and it'll match up. We can set this as blank, and that will be the, and now when we set it to turbulent smooth, it actually does line up the way we want. So, and for this instance, the drop-down menu isn't really a good choice. But, like, let's say you have here our noise type. We have 4 different options with no breaks in between. Linking something like this would be a better idea than linking something that has all these breaks or even all these options. Because if you're wanting to get all the way down to threads, guess what? You got to put in all of these items plus 3 blank spaces. More work. The whole point of this is to make life easier, right? So that is not something that makes life easier. So let's set this to turbulent smooth. So now let's work on the timing for the matte for our text. The way this is set up, if we go into our text PC layer and we have our white solid 2 up here, we have a fractal noise, and the actual animation comes from the keyframes on this brightness. So if we hit U on the keyboard, we can see these keyframes. All right, so let's go back to our main comp, and on top of our text controls, let's add another one of our friends, the slider control. Now this can be used to connect anything with a number value. So what we're going to do is lock up our text controls, go into our text PC, and we're going to alt click on the brightness here and link that to our slider. Now another thing we're going to need to do is transfer these keyframes over to our text controls. So we can select them, and let's go to right where this first keyframe is. Let's select them, hit Command C to copy. Let's go over to our main comp, and let's hit E to bring up the effects and go into our slider control. And where it says slider, without moving our playhead so that it starts off at the same time, we can hit Command V, and that will paste our keyframes. And I think it goes without mentioning, we can just delete these keyframes right here in our text PC, and it will still animate. So this way we can control the timing. Maybe we want to move this first keyframe, have it start at 2 seconds, maybe come in a lot quicker. Something like this. And we'll rename this to Matte Annie for animation. How about that? All right, so that's just some of the ways we can quickly and easily, in most cases, looking at you, drop-down menu. This is a way we can quickly and easily make changes to all of our stuff that we might need to make changes to without having to dig through a whole bunch of compositions. We can do it automatically just from our main composition. Alright, well, I hope you found that useful. If you did, feel free to leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications, do all that fancy stuff, why don't ya? Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.